Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church, located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Also, the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. Most of you probably have heard about the recent police shooting of 16-year-old Ma'Kia Bryant in Ohio. And I just want to say, for the record, it's tragic. Anytime a 16-year-old loses her life, his or her life, it is tragic. A life cut short way too early. But I want to discuss a couple of things here. And first of all, there's a reason why her name is going to be in the headlines. You're going to hear more about this story over and over again. It's going to be used, like many of the others, as a lightning rod to divide us, to separate us, to spark us emotionally. And I just want to talk about a couple of things so that we are mindful of it, so that we don't get taken advantage of it. Of course, we know that anytime any person gets killed, especially a young lady, 16 years old, young girl, lady, a woman yet, gets killed, it's tragic. But you have to be careful. You have to be careful to find out all the facts before making a judgment call. But see, things like this are things that are very easy to spark an emotional response. And because most of us are very emotional and we don't usually think logically, but we think emotionally, the media is very good at fanning those flames. And I just want to just share a couple of thoughts. And I just pray that you listen, not with your emotions, but let's start the conversation from a logical perspective. Right now, I was in law enforcement in the past. I was trained with firearms and different things like that. And I will say, I'll make a statement, and it's not going to be a popular statement, especially because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't help to promote the agenda that's being promoted. But the officer actually did the right thing. Unfortunately, he did the right thing. Young person's dead. If you look at the video, the 16-year-old Ma'Kia Bryant, she was actually trying to stab another 16-year-old girl, I'm assuming, or a young lady her age. And she probably most likely would have killed her based on the footage. She would have killed her. I mean, she was very pulling back, and she was, very violently pushing forward to kill the other girl. So now at this point, a police officer, law enforcement officer, has to make a choice, right? So does he allow Ma'Kia to kill the other young lady and he just stands there, or does he, as he did, use his weapon to fatally shoot Ma'Kia? And I'm sure if he could do it some other way, I won't say I'm sure, I don't know him, but I'm pretty sure if he could have done it some other way, he would have done it some other way. But in law enforcement, you're trained there. Deadly force is used in order to protect lives. Now, one of the things we have to get out of, and we have to stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated, is that in this era of people that are, it's like equality, right? This is a new thing that they're pushing, is equality. So everyone is equal. Now, everyone has similar value, but we have to get out of this mentality that we are putting a perpetrator as being equal to a victim. A perpetrator is being equal to a victim. Now, what do I mean by that? So in that scenario, and I've talked to a couple people, and they said, well, that's somebody's daughter. What if that was somebody's daughter? Now, but the other young lady who would have been a possible homicide victim was someone's daughter as well. And so we can't use this false equivalency to say that the person who was going to commit a violent crime is equal to the person who would be a victim of a violent crime. And what I mean by that is that a person who's doesn't have the right to violently attack someone else with a knife, right? It puts you in a different category. And so if you were to take the life of someone who was trying to commit a violent crime, then that's justified, because no one has the right or obligation to be a victim of a violent crime, right? If she's just the young lady, I don't know what happened before that, if they were fighting or whatever the case may be. If the knife wasn't introduced, I'm sure that they probably could have broken up the fight, right? They could have separated the two. They could have used some type of other force in order to separate them. But because that knife was introduced, then it was nearly impossible for, hey, Debbie, how you doing? It was almost impossible for him to have done it that way, right? Again, I want to reiterate, because people say, act like you're being inconsiderate or you are not showing empathy. And people will say, what if that was your daughter, right? So here's my take on that. My kids wouldn't do that, never would do that. My sons or daughters. But if my loved one, no matter who they are, if they were going to try to take someone's life or they were going to violently attack someone else and they got harmed in the process, then it would have to be justified. I couldn't say just because that's my daughter, she has the right or she should be untouched in that situation, because she would have killed the other girl. The other girl had the right to her life as well. Anytime you involve yourself in that type of thing and you become a victimizer, then you run the risk of getting killed. You know, I think about the George Floyd situation, and as tragic as it was that he lost his life, but if you look at his past record, he was he victimized some people as well. And one of the reports is he actually went to jail because he held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach as they robbed her house. And so whenever we think about that, and we think about someone like that whose life is lost, what if we saw the video of the people that they victimized? What if we saw that? How would that change your perception? Or when you begin to think about these other people and how many people that they might have harmed, do we think about that? Now, and the reason I'm bringing all that up is what we're seeing social engineering at its best. Right. And you have to guard your energy. I'm going to say that again. We're seeing social engineering at its best, and you have to guard your energy. That's why they're pushing these stories of people, and every story that they push where there's a white police officer and a person of color that loses their life, there's always questions behind it. The person on the other end, if you look at all these cases, or 99% of these cases, the person who lost their life to a white law enforcement officer has some kind of criminality behind it, right? They weren't just standing around minding their business. And that's intentional. It's intentional because it's getting our energies pushed in a certain direction. And I'm going to prove it in a second, if you bear with me. But I just want to reiterate that we have to be careful, because a person who is a violent offender, who violently offends someone or does things to other people, they're not equivalent to a innocent law-abiding citizen in the law's eyes, or even in our eyes. So, you know, and just for the record, excuse me, allergies acting up. Just for the record, a 16-year-old with a knife is just as deadly as a 18 or 20 or 30-year-old with a knife. Right. So, or just like a gun. And one of the things that you think about in law enforcement is you have, you should have the right to go home to your family as well. And so when you're confronted with a person who has a weapon, whether it's a 16-year-old or whoever, God bless you too, then they're just as deadly. So if you got stabbed violently by a 16-year-old, you'll be just as dead as if you got stabbed by a 30-year-old. So that knife introduced into the scenario changes the whole complexity. You can't keep focusing on the fact that this young lady was 16. You have to look at the possible outcome if the officer wouldn't have taken the actions that they took. And I'm going to share a couple of other stories, but here's how you know you're being manipulated, right? Here's how you know that they are trying to manipulate you. Now, they'll focus on this Ma'Kia Bryant story, right? The police officer was called to the scene because and people were saying that this young girl's here. She's trying to stab people with a knife, and she attacked their grandmother, whoever's voice that was on the 911 recorded call. So you know about Ma'Kia Bryant, right? You know about George Floyd. You probably don't know about Nyara Given. I haven't heard that name in the news. They haven't been promoting that story. Why haven't you heard about them, about her? Nyara Given on April 22nd was a 13-year-old that was stabbed to death by another 13-year-old by the name of Janiyah Pate. Right. This is in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is still in Ohio, but you have one 13-year-old stabbing another 13-year-old to death. But why aren't they talking about that? Why isn't there outrage? Why isn't LeBron James tweeting about that? Because it's not part of the narrative that they're carrying out. I'm gonna tell you another name. I haven't heard of Jaslyn Adams. Jaslyn Adams hasn't been on the front lines of the newspapers and the media outlets, right? News stories. Jaslyn Adams is a 7-year-old that was shot multiple times while her and her father were sitting in a McDonald's drive-thru. And so this 7-year-old gets shot multiple times and dies. This other 13-year-old gets stabbed to death, but you hear very little about it. Why isn't that on the mainstream? Why isn't people up in arms about that? Because it doesn't promote the narrative. right? Because they are trying to get your energy to always these other sketchy type of situations that aren't just cut and dry, right? But they get you emotionally charged and promoting these things in a way that they're manipulating the masses, they're manipulating the media. And so that's why I'm saying to you, you have to be very careful, right? Because a law enforcement officer, their job is to use deadly force in order to protect another life, right? So there's another life. Now, again, when they have us resonating on this emotional level because they introduce the fact that it's a 16-year-old. So most of the time, or most of us will say automatically, what's a 16-year-old, and then our hearts are saddened because we think about our children. We think about how innocent a 16-year-old. But that's all to stoke your emotions, right? Because that 16-year-old would have been just as deadly as anybody else if she was allowed to plunge that knife into the other young lady's body, who we assume was about 16 as well. Jaslyn Adams, like I said, 7 years old, shot to death. You didn't hear anything about that. Here's another statistic from the Chicago Tribune. In March of 2021, you have, just in March, this is just in March of this year, 233 gun-related incidents and 298 shooting victims in Chicago, right? In Chicago this year, just in March, in the month of March, 298 shooting victims, 298 shooting victims, right? Where's the press at? You don't hear about those type of things. I think it was last year, I'm pretty sure the statistic was like 800 people got shot in Chicago, right? But they don't have you focusing on that. So out of the 800 people, the only person we talked about mainly is George Floyd and people like that, right? There was a rash a few months ago of like 5 rappers got killed in a short period of time, right? You didn't hear anything about that. You know why? Because that was black on black crime, right? Because that doesn't fit the narrative. That doesn't stoke the emotions like the white officer and the black male does. And so you have one George Floyd, you have 200 black on incidences of black on black, and even more than that. So I'm just using for example, because in America, African-American males are number one victims and perpetrators of homicide. That's the real issue, right? And so you're talking about thousands of black men that die every year through gun violence, but they don't march or protest in the streets about that. Only thing they talk about is the white cop that shoots the black male. And so for every time you have an incident like George Floyd, you'll have 1,000 other incidences of a black male that got shot by another black man. Here's another statistic in Chicago. The majority of homicides are African-American males, and 80% of the homicides in Chicago regarding or involving black males go unsolved. 80% of them go unsolved. Nobody goes to jail for that. But we're not marching and protesting in the streets there, right? Black Lives Matter shows up and they make money, right? They're there to manipulate. They're there to control us. That's why, if you remember last year, I talked about how I wouldn't stand with Black Lives Matter, and it panned out, as I said, because they come in, they use the pain of the black community, and they profit off of it. And then when they leave, black people are worse off normally than when they started. They're usually worse off than when they started, right? And so these Black Lives Matter people, the people at the top of the organization, have become very wealthy. There was a recent article that I think it was Patrice Cullors, who was one of the organizers or founders of Black Lives Matter. She just spent $3.4 million buying real estate, right? She's gotten wealthy. Black Lives Matter made about $90 million in 2020 on the books that we know of. And the parents of the victims that they use in order to garner support are complaining because they didn't get any of the money. They don't even know the Black Lives Matter people. The Black Lives Matter people didn't even go talk to them because it's not about helping the black community. It's about stoking the flames of racial unrest, having us fighting and hating each other. They're making money off of the one Black Lives Matter person actually was at the Grammys, Tamika Mallory. She actually got to perform at the Grammys. So they're becoming popular. They're becoming wealthy. It's because they're helping to promote the agenda, right? The globalist agenda. They're helping to promote it, the Antichrist agenda. And because most of us operate or function on an emotional level, we're getting taken advantage of. And so it's time out for us to keep falling victim to the same old thing. If you care about the one life, we say Black Lives Matter. If you care about Ma'Kia Bryant, what about the other two? What about the 298 people in the month of March that got shot? Right? We don't care about them. What about the thousands and thousands of Black people that get killed every year, Black on Black crime? 80% of them in Chicago alone go unsolved. See, it's like a play. It's like the hidden hand. It's like a sleight of hand trick. You know, magicians. If you see a magician, yep, they followed the Marxist world agenda. Actually, it's blood money. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. It's like a magician. What a magician does is when he's doing a trick, right? He usually does this and he makes big sweeping movements, and you focus on that, and the whole time he's doing something else over here. That's what's happening. They're doing something to get your attention, to have you focus over here. But the real issues that are destroying our community are still going on unnoticed. Now, I'll go back to Patrisse Cullors for a second. Now, she says she's a trained Marxist, right? Marxists are against the wealthy people, right? Marxists are about redistributing the wealth and empowering the working class. So how is this Marxist? How can she justify spending $3 million in purchasing real estate? That's the contradiction, right? That makes her a hypocrite, because if I'm a Marxist, I don't believe in people getting super wealthy. That's the foundation of Marxist ideology, that capitalism is evil. So she is profiting off of capitalism. She hasn't done anything for the families of the actual victims that they use to gain support. And people don't see how backwards that is, how wrong that is. Like we don't see how much of we're getting played. We just keep getting played over and over again. And like I said, if you look throughout my videos, I said this in several videos, because I study things from a historical perspective, not from an emotional perspective. That has been what has happened over the decades. That people come in, they use the pain of Black people, they use real grievances, taking them out of context and exaggerate them, and they use them for their benefit, and ultimately the community stays in status quo. The community stays in limbo, right? And then the first thing, and like people like Maxine Waters. Now, Maxine Waters, actually, she's part of pushing the agenda too. And I believe, and I believe this very strongly, that the reason she made that statement she did about we got to get out here, we got to be confrontational, I'm paraphrasing, was she wanted to stir up things. Because when they stirred up these riots last year, it gave them a level of control, the liberal left, right? It stirs up things, it destabilizes cities and states. It destabilized the economy. And here's the other interesting thing about it. During the pandemic, the wealthy got wealthier, and middle class and regular people and small business owners and all that other stuff suffered tremendously. And so, of course, what a better way to continue to not only solidify your status, but to actually gain status. I was reading Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, is worth $180 billion now. He's worth $180 billion. Bill Gates has gained money. You know, he's increased his wealth. He's worth over $105 billion. So, you know, we have to wake up, people, and we have to stop getting played by this. So law enforcement, you know, their job is to get home safely. Their job is to protect human life. And so this cop was called to the scene. He was made aware that this 16-year-old was trying to stab someone or stab people. He saw it occurring. He stopped it. Absolutely. Democrat Party, brown shirts. Yes, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And, you know, it's sad. It's sad that they keep running the same game on us, and we keep falling for it, right? They keep falling. We keep falling for it. It's unfortunate. And the level of hypocrisy is just it's deafening, you know. But the main thing I want you to get out of this is that the manipulation, the real manipulation, the social engineering that's occurring, it's to steal your energy. And so as a collective, when we put our energy somewhere, we're energetic beings as human beings, right? God made you energetic. That's why, and use a perfect example. if you were in a room and someone walked up behind you, even if you didn't see them, you could feel them. You could feel their presence there, right? We're energetic beings, and part of your energy empowers things in your life, right? So whatever you put your energy to empowers things in your life. And so you have to be very careful, because when they are putting these narratives out here in mainstream media, and collectively we're coming together and we're focusing our energy in a certain place, it empowers that thing. So now that they push this whole idea that the country is so racist and it's so dangerous for black men, and LeBron James, you have to realize that he's part of pushing the agenda as well, which is why he's speaking out about certain things. But when they spoke out against the oppression, the people getting oppressed in China, he told the guy to be quiet. He didn't know what he was talking about, right? Because he's making his money off of that. LeBron James is probably worth close to $1 billion, but yet he walks around telling this lie that he's under threat. Like his life is, they show one of his houses worth like $50 million. He lives in a gated community, very upscale community, but yet he would have you to believe that he feels threatened every time he leaves his house. That's what his statement he made. We're getting gunned down every time, or hunted down every time we leave our households. And that's just a lie. He's promoting the agenda, and they're counting on those who follow after him that are fans of LeBron, that they're going to bite and they're going to feed into the false narrative. So you have to be very careful, people. I just want you to have your eyes open. And again, it's very unfortunate that this young lady, Ma'Kia Bryant, had lost her life. But we have to look at it not through the lens of our emotions and our feelings, but look at it through logic and look at it through reasoning, and so that you don't get taken advantage of. Again, we can't, as a community, continue to value wrongdoers the same as innocent people, innocent bystanders. It's like it's really sad. It's really sad that we're getting manipulated like this, and we got to stop, people. We have to have people that are speaking out to speak truth to power, right? And don't jump on this emotional bandwagon and get taken for a ride. This has been Joe Green. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please share these videos if it's beneficial to you. Until next time, be blessed. See you later.